Hello, welcome to today's webinar with the PCST Teaching Forum and PCST on connecting the local to the global, exploring impactful science communication teaching practices. My name is Emma Gill. I'm a doctoral candidate at the University of Western Australia, and I'm speaking to you today from Bindjarab Noongar Budja, the country of the Bindjarab Noongar people of the First Nations of Australia. So I invite you to put into the chat where you are also coming from today. Thank you. Just before we start, I'd like to let you know today we are going to be recording the webinar, and this will be made available on the PCST website as well once we're finished. And that we're also talking in English today, and hopefully I will attempt not to talk too quickly. So we are going to be talking about how we as teachers are doing global to local science communication, and this is something I'm interested in. My research is on identity, inclusion and education in science communication in around the world. So we've invited some wonderful speakers to present their case studies on how they are doing the global to local connection, because this is something that's been talked about in the Teaching Forum for some time now. What actually is science communication? If we can decide on what that is, how do we teach it? What about those local contexts and big global issues that we have when our classrooms bring together students with different national, cultural and disciplinary backgrounds, and the issues that we teach are from climate, health, food and water security? Those are also global issues. This all shapes our curriculum, and today we'd like to talk about some things that we can share, learnings about how we can make these appropriate teaching practices, and hopefully we can get to sharing some of those perspectives from you who have all joined as well. Therefore, I would love to introduce to you today two speakers. We did have a third from the Philippines who was unfortunately unable to join us today. However, I think that means that we're going to be able to have a little bit more time for Q&A and discussion, which with the wonderful global audience is going to be fantastic. So thank you all. Since there are a couple more people still coming in, I will maybe be a little bit slower on this, but our two speakers today are Dr Swati Bute from Jagrand Lake City University and Dr Heather Bray from the University of Western Australia. Dr Swati is an Associate Professor of Journalism and Communication in Bhopal in India. She has 17 years in academia, 7 years in the industry, and her career includes key faculty roles at Amity University, the National Institute of Health and Family Welfare. And in 2022, Dr Swati won an Achala Award for her work in journalism, education and research. Also speaking, we've got Dr Heather Bray, who has over 20 years of experience in science communication as a practitioner, teacher, scholar and researcher, and is currently the coordinator of the Master of Science Communication and minor at the University of Western Australia. She's the discipline chair. And both of our speakers are going to be talking about their own case studies and the connection that they are making in their teaching. So I would like to invite you all, as has been said in the chat here, to use the chat window to share questions and comments while our speakers are presenting, and then also to just wait until after we've had those presentations, when then we'll do our Q&A session. I'm not sure if we've put Q&A on, so it's best to put those in chat. I know that I've got a few friends here who can help to collate some issues if we want to. I'm really excited about this evening. So I think it does seem like a good time for us to start. Dr. Swati Bute, may I ask you to start your presentation, please?
Yes, thank you so much. Am I audible? So, good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Swati Bute. I'm from India. Presently, I'm working as an associate professor with Jagran Lake City University. Before joining to Jagran Lake City University, I worked with the National Institute of Health and Family Welfare. It is an autonomous institute of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India. So, it's a government organization. I worked with that institute as a assistant professor for health communication. So I used to teach medical practitioners over there, students who were doing their MD program. So that was a one part. So I used to teach them health communication specifically in the context of intercultural communication, interpersonal communication, a communication between doctor and the patient. The second work which I did over there, that was being a part of central a team of central government. We used to go to different states of India to monitor and assess the national health program, which was started by the government of India in 2011. So I visited lot many different states, and as you know that India is a very diverse country, specifically in the context of socio-cultural background. So each state, they have different culture, they have different language. Lot many dialects are there which local people speaks at a local level. So discussing with them something related to health communication, specifically a new initiative started by the government of India to reduce the maternal and neonatal death rate over there, because if you can see in different states, the health facilities are not proper. So the one objective of that program was also to increase the health facilities and push the people to go to the hospitals for the delivery purpose, so that they can reduce the death rate, the maternal death as well as the neonatal death rate. That was the primary objective of that particular program. So in this presentation, I am sharing my experience of visiting to Uttarakhand state, and what kind of socio-cultural practices are in use over there, specifically when it comes to reproductive health. And when we discuss about the pregnancy and the institutional delivery and the health of mother and the child. So all these issues are very, you can say, cultural, they have a very cultural background. People don't speak a lot when it comes to reproductive health. Talking with them about all these issues, somewhere you can say motivating them, convincing them about the importance of institutional delivery and how we can reduce the maternal and neonatal death rate if we are motivating, if we are practicing institutional deliveries. So I will be sharing my experiences. So as a part of this particular program, National Health Mission, I used to go to different state as a part of central team, and we used to give training to the state level health officials, because in India, health and education are two important areas where state governments, they can take their individual decisions on the basis of the local realities which they face over there. So we used to give training to the state level health officials, and the state level health officials, they used to give training to the health workers, specifically the women health workers, who were directly that program is still going on. So these women health workers, they normally meet to the rural women's and the rural people, and they go to the people's houses to tell them about the importance of institutional delivery, and what kind of precautions they can follow during the birth of a child, specifically when it comes to umbilical cord care and the practices which local people follow, and postnatal care and the hygiene, as well as the nutrition of the mother and the child. So these are some of the areas which people don't discuss because they follow their traditional practices. So the cultural practices, traditional practices which they are following since generations. So we can see that people are not ready to adopt new, you can say, modern practices, specifically when it comes to reproductive health. So that's the major task for ASHA worker. ASHA worker are the local women health worker. So the IC officers, state level health officers, they provide training to these women health workers, and they normally go door to door in rural areas to teach and to give training to the women about the importance of institutional delivery. So it's kind of a chain, like central team giving a training to the state level health officials, and the state level health officials giving training and facilitating, also mentoring to the health workers which are working at a very local or in the rural areas. So the major task which I faced during the training which I used to give to the IC officers over there, that's the language, because India is in India, you can say, different states are there and they have their regional languages. Apart from the regional languages, people also speak in local dialects. So language is a most important, you can say, challenge, because people nowadays, because of the internet and the mobile connectivity, people know about Hindi and the other languages. Otherwise, normally people speak in their mother tongue, or you can say the local language. So language is the most important challenge when we talk about science communication or issues related to health communication. Second, it is very, very difficult, even after, you can say, a lot of development at the economic level, at the social level, and a lot of, you can say, internet exposure which people are getting. But still, some of the local practices are there which people are not ready to change, specifically when it comes to reproductive health. And reproductive health, or you can say, these are some of the issues in which people still don't talk very openly. So if we are talking about family planning, or if we are talking about institutional delivery or the practices of breastfeeding, so people, specifically the rural women, even the male members of the families, they don't speak openly, because the family structure is like that, or the societal structure is like that, that the young people or the young members of the family normally, though, they don't speak openly in front of the elder members of the family. So if a newborn, you can say, child is there in the family, so discussing all these issues are not it's not very easy to discuss on all these issues. So hygiene practices, hand washing practices, breastfeeding practices, self childbirth practices, immunization, because in some cases, it was also seen that people are not ready to give vaccination to the children because of some religious reasons, or because of, you can say, some institutional deaths. So people, they have that kind of phobia that if their children are getting vaccination, probably they will die. So some of the because with the in some cases there was a contaminated vaccines which was distributed in the local area. So that kind of a fear is there in the society, that if they are giving vaccination to their newborn child, probably he will die. So some of the local taboos, some of the local practices, cultural practices related to hygiene of newly born child, as well as the mother, breastfeeding practices, these are the issues which I faced when I used to discuss with the ASHA workers as well as the state level officials. what I learned from my discussion with the ASHA workers as well as the state level officers, that empathy is very, very essential whenever we are talking about health communication or the issues related to science communication, because every country they follow, specifically diverse societies, they follow different cultural practices, and they are not ready to change their traditions, beliefs, the practices which are existing over there since generations. So, and women are not ready because of the societal structures. Women don't speak openly on all these issues. So empathy is very, very important, specifically in health communication. And if you are talking about reproductive health, second, understanding the local culture and the societal structure, that is also important when we are talking about health communication and the areas of health communication. Language, understanding the local dialect is also very, very important, and it is also necessary for us to understand the educational level of the young people who are living over there, how much they are educated, and if that particular education education contributed in changing their mindset, specifically related to the socio-cultural practices which are existing and which are not good. Some of the practices are not good. So it is necessary to know how much young people are ready to adopt the modern practices of related to health communication. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Swati. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Heather Bray. And I'd like to, just before I do, encourage you to please start thinking about some of the questions that you would like to ask, things that Swati has brought up that might be either relevant to your area or something that is maybe you're thinking that won't work, and maybe we can have some discussion about that afterwards. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm just waiting for some slides. It's this awkward interpretive dance thing that I need to do until things start. But while we are waiting for the slides, I may as well start introducing myself. Emma introduced me earlier. I'm Dr. Heather Bray. I'm the coordinator of the Science Communication Program at the University of Western Australia. I'm also Emma's supervisor, so she's been spending a lot of time with me today. Okay, how are we going? Fabulous, thank you. Okay, so like Emma, I'm also on Noongar land. I'm on Wujak Noongar Budja because I'm a little bit further north. And today I'm going to be sharing my case study on attempting to decolonize science communication. So I want to pay my respects to elders past and present. And I showed you this slide in particular because this is the kind of corporate slide that we get to put in front of all of our presentations from the university. Next slide, please. So rather than offer up a Western and dictionary definition of decolonisation, I've chosen to use the voice both here and at the end of the presentation of an Indigenous scholar and writer, Amberlynn Quay Molina. And hopefully when you watch this back on the video, you'll be able to pause and actually read all of the information. But I really want to draw your attention to the last two stanzas because I think this is really what decolonisation means to me and means to Indigenous people. Here, two worlds now exist in the same space, and there is no place of innocence for settlers to stand. You are living on stolen land. What can you do about it? This poem is written for people like me. I'm a settler Australian. I'm a white Australian. My ancestors have been here, arrived between 1820 and 1920, and I've benefited from the position of privilege that my whiteness and my Anglo-Celtic heritage has. And so I'm offering, it feels very uncomfortable here as a white person speaking about Indigenous knowledges, but I'm offering my case study up as a critique and also to just show that this is what I'm doing as a white settler to acknowledge that I'm living on stolen land and I'm trying to do something about it. Next slide, please. I'm also, in terms of walking the talk, trying to do the SciComm thing, and so I'm giving you the last slide first so that hopefully you think this is relevant for you and you'll stay connected for the remaining 8 minutes or 6 minutes now. Why does decolonisation connect with the global? Well, firstly, because I think colonisation is global. Most of us will be in colonised spaces or from colonising countries. If not, you will have students from colonised countries in your classroom. If that doesn't connect with you, then maybe you can see this as an example of how we transition from the philosophical and theoretical into the practical and pragmatic. I also think that my case study connects to inclusive science communication, to ideas of science communication as or for social justice. I think it also is an example of the co-production of science and society, particularly when you talk about the social construction of race and how science has been used, or how science itself has marginalized peoples and ways of knowing, thinking, and ways of knowing, doing and being for a range of people throughout the world. And lastly, I think it's an example of how we can start to think really deeply around what science communication is, whether we're prepared to recognize it as a transdisciplinary space, or at least one where there are multiple ways of knowing, doing and being. Next slide. So my local is the University of Western Australia. The university is based on the west coast of Australia in Boorloo, which is now known as Perth. We've had a science communication program here since 2002. And as Emma said initially, I look after an undergraduate minor, which is 4 units of study, usually done alongside a STEM major, so chemistry or physics and science communication. And I also look after the Master of Science Communication, which is a 2-year degree focused on professional science communicators, and I now have a growing group of 4 or 5 PhD students. Next slide, please. So why am I decolonising the curriculum? Why am I introducing Indigenous knowledges into the science communication curriculum? Well, firstly, we now have in Australia elevating Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander knowledge systems as a research priority. This is one of our national priorities now for all research, including science, which is going to be a huge challenge for us. And maybe we have time to talk about that later. Indigenising the curriculum is also something that's coming from an institutional perspective. I'm asked to report on this and say how I'm doing this on a fairly regular basis. But also, I think lastly, I see this as a good thing, particularly reflecting my position as a settler Australian and my position of privilege. I think this is something that I have to do. I grew up learning lies of omission. I grew up not realising the harm that had been done to Indigenous people but because of their marginalisation. And I think that this is a good thing in capital letters to do. Next slide, please. So when I'm talking about Indigenous knowledge systems, I am not trying to do what this slide looks like, which is conflate all of the Indigenous knowledge systems around the world into one homogenous other framed against Western science. However, in the Indigenous knowledge systems that I've worked with, I have a student in New Zealand working with Maori. I'm now working with Indigenous people here in Australia, and also the research that I'm doing suggests that there are some things that are common to many Indigenous knowledge systems around the world. And the first is that the ontology, the question of what is reality, is very different to our Western knowledge systems that many of us might know. And that is that the reality includes both tangible and intangible beings. We could call them spirits if you want, but really that idea that there is a pluriverse, there is a hidden universe within our own that those of us who are settlers cannot see, but this is alive and real and living for our Indigenous people. It's a relational ontology with country in a capital letters because that country, that landscape is alive, it's living and often sentient. And of course, we need to really talk about interweaving this knowledge system rather than integrating. You don't mix these together and get a nice shade of purple. You really need to keep these knowledge systems intact if you're going to treat them with respect. Next slide, please. So There's a lot of detail on this slide, but what I'm really trying to communicate here is that it's not one unit that I'm offering up. I'm trying to embed this in the curriculum throughout year levels 1 to 5, and that I'm scaffolding it. In the first year, we really just introduce science as a way of knowing and also introduce Indigenous knowledges. In the second year units, I'm really focusing on cross-cultural communication and allowing the diverse students in my classroom to feel that they have an authentic voice, even if they don't look like the stereotype science communicator who in Australia is usually an older white man. I start to bring this in the third year unit where I start talking about museums, botanic gardens and zoos, because I don't think you can talk about those institutions without talking about their links to colonisation, particularly botanic gardens, but national parks and things as well. And in the level 5 units, here is where we can start getting into specialist knowledge. In the unit citizen science, we do have a module on working with traditional owners on country. And in my science and society unit, which is really a theory unit, we do have a module on post-colonialism and more at that. Next slide, please. So how have I done this? I am very fortunate to have worked with students who have looked at this and particularly have given post-colonial critiques, such as Amanda, who is from Zambia, and Ginny, who's working in New Zealand. I've also have a student, Camilla, who's working with Yaru people in Broome. I did a lot of reading and research students. It's important to collaborate, but I think the number one thing is to listen. And for Indigenous peoples, listening is really important. They often don't tell you things that you're not ready to hear. So you need to listen and be open. But if you're not sure about how to do this, reach out, connect, talk, listen, read. Next slide, please. So the things to think about when you're going here is that it's going to be uncomfortable potentially for people like me anyway, for settlers like me, it is uncomfortable, not just because of our history, but also because I was trained in the science and this feels weird. And there is a word for this, it's called epistemic discomfort, and you have to learn to sit with it. I think also we have to be really careful about saviorism. Again, I'm talking to people like me who are white and working in these colonized spaces. We need to come in with humility and use our privilege in an act of allyship, rather than trying to virtue signal and look at me, I'm a good white person. That's not what this is about. And of course, we're always afraid of being tokenistic, and sometimes my efforts do feel tokenistic, but I'm reassured when I've heard elders say it's better to do something than nothing. And I know that I'm on a learning journey, just like my country, and we're trying very hard to undo some of the damages of the past. Next and last slide, please. So again, I offer up a poem from Amberlynn Cray-Molina, and again, particularly the second stanza here, again, reminds us what's required of us if we're in decolonising spaces. It requires that settlers continually identify, challenge and disrupt the structures of settler colonialism, including those patterns embedded in hearts and minds and in ways of relating to Indigenous people. This is what I'm trying to do, and I look forward to hearing from you as to whether you think that I have made any progress or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Wonderful. All right. Now is the part of the webinar when we get to ask the juicy questions of our two presenters and of each other, potentially, especially after such a thought-provoking topic. Maybe we should start with the big picture. I'll do some questions while our audience could please put some questions of your own in the chat, or raise your hand. And I'll just start by saying, do we all have the same idea of science communication? Should there be many understandings of science communication that are more reflective of local contexts? Is that something that you found with your students, and how do you work with that as a difference? I can see Heather's nodding. Would you like to start?
Yeah, I wasn't sure which one of you wanted to start. Unfortunately, because of the challenges for many Indigenous students, I've not actually had very many Indigenous students in the classroom. However, at least Australian Indigenous. And so I can't really reflect on that. However, I do find disciplinary backgrounds are quite different, and that students who've been taught in science and taught that science is very much about the material world and about objectivity do struggle a little bit with this. And of course, I'm in a project with scientists who struggle to appreciate that there are things that they can't see that are real to the people we work with. And so I think that there is a real epistemic leap, a real leap that we have to do in terms of what knowledge is. And so for me, even the word science, I've been using the word Indigenous knowledges. Should I be using Indigenous science? What actually is it? I do think that, yeah, there is a different understanding of what science is for the students. And I think that, you know, when we start talking about Indigenous knowledges, we might have to even rethink what science is.
Thank you. I think, Swati, like maybe there's something that you could talk about with those local contexts and the cultural differences that might have influenced this as well.
Yes, specifically when we talk in the context of Indian society, so like in different socio-cultural background, people they have adopted lot many practices which are somewhere they think that these practices are scientific in nature, and they are not ready to change those practices. Even after, you can say, a lot of development and modernization of the society. So that cultural, you can say, background of the people who are living in different parts of the India, I think that is because of a lack of scientific temper, or the science community, the activities which we have not started specifically for the science to increase the scientific temperament of the people, so that science, the you can say, uh, that kind of, you can say, somewhere lack of political will to promote the scientific communication, that is a reason why people are show some kind of, you can say, uh, 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 stubbornness, I can say, for in not adopting the scientific practices and believing in the traditional or the cultural practices which they are following since the generation. So motivating them to adopt all these practices is a challenge, because we somewhere we are not able to, you can say, develop that kind of environment. So that's the reason, I think that is
I
the.
feel like, thank you. I feel like this might link to a question that Lisbeth Tobacco has asked in the comments about whether, in terms of social structure, there are elders or important figures in the community that are needed or helpful in getting important health-related information to the young mothers. And if so, how does that work in your local context?
Yes, so like this program was started by the government, so they have adopted some, you can say, media camp. They have started some media campaign. They have adopted some practices to somewhere convince to the mothers about the importance of institutional delivery, and going to the hospital for delivery and getting all the benefits which the hospitals are providing. But I think the language is the most important factor why people are not accepting or believing or adopting these practices. So starting health campaigns in a local language, that is the most important thing. If we can do that, probably that will help in understanding people about, people can understand about the importance of going to all these facilities and adopting all these modern practices.
I hear what you're saying. We talk about a lot about local knowledges, and I talk a lot about language is culture. And so I feel like that the attention being paid to how the communication is happening with the local community in the language that they have might be, yeah, sounds something pretty useful.
Yes.
I was wondering if there was yeah, like is this productive or mainly a challenge to have this tension of the local knowledges?
Yes, local knowledge, or you can say indigenous knowledge, is over there, but and people they follow all these you can say practices practices which is like indigenous knowledge which exists in the form of local practices. But if we want to specifically when we talk in the context of this program, the major objective of this program was to reduce the maternal and child death rate. So it is necessary for the local people also that there are some loopholes in the indigenous practices also, because and that is the reason of death rate. So how we can motivate them to go to the hospitals, and how we can motivate them for the institutional delivery, that is something that is again a task. How we can relate it with the indigenous knowledge so that people can believe in it and trust on what we are offering to them.
Thank you. I was thinking as well, and thank you for these questions that are coming through, about how we want to look at these local contexts and apply this globally, especially when we're talking about things like health communications and some of those problems that have been identified in that. So both of you are talking about local knowledge. Is this, how can we, or maybe we can't, transfer the interventions that you're doing to local, from local to global contexts? Is it something that you can actually think that we can apply globally? Let's go to Heather for a moment.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Swati, you go.
Yeah. So, as a part of this program, government has started a lot of initiatives, and the system or the mechanism which they have started as a part of this program, I think that is a very good example which we can share with the other countries also. That apart from you can say local opposition in adopting modern practices, what kind of mechanism we can establish so that somewhere we can motivate to the people, and we can develop their trust in adopting these modern practices. So yes, we have seen changes over there. So when we have appointed ASHA workers, somebody who is from the community itself, so that when that woman is going to the woman and telling her about the importance of institutional delivery, somewhere she is giving some examples to her, and when we are giving them some financial support, so yes, the percentage is increasing, and we have seen a lot of positive results of these initiatives started by the government. So it is it's time taking, but if we are adopting a proper mechanism in which we have identified different stakeholders who are working at different levels, so probably it will help in coming. It helped in Indian context. It helped a lot, and probably in coming time it will help us to change the entire scenario. And it is very good example which we can offer to the other countries where socio-cultural factors plays very important role in accepting the modern health practices. So
Thank
that
you.
we can learn from this particular model.
Thank you. And just before I also pop that question across to Heather, I feel like there's a couple of questions in the chat that are adding to this about the terminologies and the concepts and how those are also part of it. Can I add that to the question, Heather?
Sure. I mean, I think I was really pleased to hear Swati talk about trust, because I think that is a big area here. When I'm talking about the Australian context, we're talking about a group of people that were marginalised, and I mean, Aboriginal Australians weren't even considered people. They weren't included in the census until 1968 or whatever it was. And that means that women or people that I've worked with who are a few years older than me, were considered flora and fauna when they were born. So that's the backdrop here. And so I think that while that might be specific, the kinds of things that are common between Dr. Swati and myself around having empathy, realizing that it's not a case of going, your beliefs are wrong, you need to do this, that we need to find spaces to allow people to remain connected to their culture while also recognizing that some of the practices are putting their babies at risk. And that's really important. I think working with elders, being able to translate what we're talking about, not just into local words, but local concepts. And so this is why I'm involved in a research project that even blows open what is science communication for Yawuru people in Broome. And so, making sure that they are involved in every stage of the process. My background's more in environmental communication, but the same community has been involved in health research, and there's a paper called We've Been Measured from Head to Toe. So when people are the objects of research rather than the co-creators of knowledge, that is when the problems occur. So I think for us, it's really important that we recognise that we may be in a background of a loss of trust, that we have to rebuild trust, and that we do that with respect, empathy, and really trying to find ways to work with local communities that doesn't perpetuate harm done by some of the activities of Western science, and focuses on the good things that Western science can do, like saving babies.
Thank you. I feel like if we bring this back to the classroom, how do you teach the skills of empathy, to your students for applying that in their practice? Are there other skills or qualities that you're intentionally encouraging to help students cross these different boundaries, or is it something that develops organically? What do we do with this? Throwing it to either of you first.
I think,
okay.
Yes, you can. You please go through.
Okay, I just wanted to offer something up. I mean, a fairly facetious answer is to get myself a PhD student who's going to find out how I do that, which is you, Emma. But that's a bit of a joke. I think, to answer some of the questions, I was actually incorrect. I have had Indigenous students in my classroom, but none in the Master of Science Communication course. And there are pathways to help Indigenous students into the classroom. And in terms of it being a priority, that's just the context that we all have to agree with that. But I do think, for me, first of all, that there is more than one way of knowing, thinking, and being is a foundational, threshold concept. But empathy, respect, reflecting on one's own positionality, reflecting on, the assumptions that you're bringing to the classroom and whose knowledges I'm including in the classroom, and how open I am to multiple ways of knowing and being in the classroom, and therefore letting students see that. So being open about difference, acknowledging difference, respect, empathy, and that there are multiple ways of being are probably the main ways I'm operationalising what I think is foundational to being more inclusive.
In my view, it is very, very necessary for us to understand the local realities, because to know who are our target audiences. If we are dealing with a culturally diverse societies, then it is very, very necessary for us to go and spend some time with the local people, because the individual stories are very different. We can't say that people of this particular village, they have adopted certain practices and they will we can change their mindset or their behavior in a specific way. It's not like that. The individual stories are different, their experiences are different. So spending time with the people and going with the solution. Whenever we are going to the community, we should go with the solution, because even if the target audiences are different, they are different at socio-cultural level, they are different at socio-economic level, they are different at socio-educational level. But yes, they think logically. And if we are providing solutions by using logic, if we are convincing, telling them, communicating something by using some facts, if we are able to develop that trust factor, then definitely it is very easy to somewhere you can say change their behavior, or you can say convince our you can say, to develop a scientific temper amongst the society and introduce a new practice, or you can say a risk-free practice, if you can say. So if you want to introduce a risk-free practice, or if you want to introduce a positive behavior in a society or a positive practice in a society, so it is necessary for us to adopt a logical approach. So it is necessary that if people are not educated, it's difficult to convince them by using a logic. It's not like that. People coming from different socio-economic, cultural, educational background, but if we are going with solution which is supported by the fact and logical and proper reasoning, so I think it's very easy to at some point convince them and introduce a modern or risk-free practices over there. And as Heather was saying, it is necessary for us to connect with them by using the empathy. Listening properly, giving attention, spending time with them, and observing the society. These are some of the approaches which we can use to connect with our audiences in a very empathetic way. So
Thank you.
that is something.
Yeah, I'm thinking we have 14 minutes left, so let's say 10, so that we can also do a nice wrap up. There are a couple of other questions from our audience. Heather, I wonder if you could very briefly talk a little bit about indigenising the curriculum as a UWA priority, how that's been received, and perhaps there were a few more questions about the inclusion of Indigenous students in the courses, which you've touched on. Just if you're able to quickly touch on that, would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. As I mentioned, there are specific pathways that allow Indigenous students to enter UWA, but it's more than just, the challenges for Indigenous people to enter higher education in Australia are multifactorial, and we're doing more here. So there are pathways, but even in postgraduate studies, the numbers drop even further, and when you start even looking at PhDs, they do drop further. And so we need to do more in this space to allow alternative recognitions of learning and things like that. But in terms of, indigenising the curriculum, it's something that we have to do. Most academics would agree that it's a capital letters good thing, but obviously it's easier to do in some disciplines than others. And I haven't seen the full report of it. We do have a School of Indigenous Studies, which is where Indigenous academics are teaching about Indigenous culture and history. Collaborating with them is important, but obviously they're small people, and the emotional and invisible load on them as Indigenous academics is already very high. And so that's, again, where I think the rest of us have to go and do the reading and do the work as well, and take on some of that labour. It's our responsibility to do it, and we shouldn't be relying on our Indigenous colleagues to do all of that work. So mixed results is something that we have to do. Most of us think it's a good thing to do. Most of us are finding it hard and are doing the best we can. But I think it is really important that those of us who are in members of the majority population, wherever you are, we need to make sure that all of that work is not just being done by our Indigenous colleagues. And I think that's probably the key message for me to take home.
Yeah, thank you. I think Anne Grant has added in the chat actually a link to a report from the Young Foundation in the UK that reflects on learning from a funding programme that aimed to support communities to lead research that mattered to them due to the sense of communities, marginalised communities potentially perceiving themselves as alienated from research and innovation. So yeah, that seems to kind of feed into that sense of identity and who we are among this space as well, can be quite important. There are, and John's also said, to boost locally sensitive SciComm requires locally embedded communicators such as the ASHA workers. So SciComm teaching must not just cater for university level learners, but must broaden to other educational levels too. Absolutely. Is why it's so lovely to have the both of you here that are talking about how we are teaching science communication in different contexts, in different ways. But we're still talking about that global to local. So I think there's one more question that I think we've got time for. When teaching science communication in global contexts, says Tom Cruthers, how can we prepare students to navigate the tension between respecting local cultural knowledge and intervening when evidence shows a practice causes harm either to themselves or to others?
I apologise. I was trying to work out what ASHA was that Joe had mentioned. What was the question again?
Sorry, ASHA was the types of workers that Dr. Swati was talking about having.
Okay. Yes,
taught in India.
What the abbreviation was. What was your question again, please, Emma?
The question is, when we're teaching psychom in global contexts, how do we prepare students to navigate the tension between respecting local cultural knowledge and intervening when evidence shows that a practice might cause harm to themselves or to others?
And I think it's very interesting the way our two presentations work together, Dr. Swati, because in some ways I'm in a context where the Indigenous knowledges are basically being almost reclaimed and restated and being re-elevated, whereas you're in a situation where the relationship between Western science and local knowledge is slightly different, and that we're still trying to find that new space. And I do think it is a challenging tension. The example of the project that my student Camilla and I are working on is where Indigenous people are undertaking traditional hunting. And so dugong and turtle are animals that the Yaru people have been eating for 65,000 years. These species are now threatened. It's not necessarily the Indigenous hunting that is threatening them. Global change is a much greater thing. However, these are things that are pretty unpalatable to a lot of people in modern society. And so this is an area of tension between a cultural practice and something that a lot of, modern educated Australians would find quite distressing, when we're talking about hunting turtles. And so that is a challenging tension. And the research is showing exactly how tense that can be. I don't necessarily have the answer to the question, Tom, but I think that's really the context that I'm working with. But I think for Dr. Swati, this is really a matter of life or death. So I'd be really interested to hear from her.
Yes, I don't teach science communication, though I'm working in a university. But if I can talk in the context of on the National Health Mission program started by the government, so how we can make a balance between what kind of cultural practices are existing over there, and when we are trying to introduce modern practices in the society. So yes, definitely we can't change the local cultural practices over the night. And if we have to introduce modern approaches or practices over there, then we have to go with some success stories, some you can say positive examples, which we can share with the local people. And definitely the community workers, they play a very important role in this you can say in this knowledge transformation, what we have achieved and how we are convincing to the local people by sharing those success stories, or you can say those successful examples. So I think that's the way we can make a balance between local practices and introducing new practices over there, supported by the modern science or developed on the basis of modern science.
Thank you. Before we do our wrap up, I want to ask whether we could do a group photo actually of the people that are here, which will involve having everybody to please turn on your camera, and then Siddharth, who is behind the scenes here, will take a screenshot. We will only take a couple of moments, and then that will also give me a moment to figure out a nice way to summarize this webinar.
Thanks, Heather. All right, so anyone who's comfortable with sharing their cameras on is welcome to. If you're not comfortable, that's fine. All right, so ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Once more, 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Siddharth. So, thank you for your contributions to today's discussion. We've heard, about how connecting the local and global it's not a simple translation exercise. It's a continual process of questioning, listening, reimagining. We've looked at some of the important tensions between science, health, and culture, and local lived realities, really, and our global narratives, and how we've got academic frameworks and types of knowledge, and decolonization, marginalization, and different communities that may have been overlooked. We had a look at decolonizing curricula, and also wanting to make some space for Indigenous knowledges, but really that when we're doing that, we have to be really aware of power, positionality, and humility, why we're doing what we're doing. So I would like us to maybe reflect on a few additional questions as we wrap up. I'm just going to double check if there were any extras just here. Nope, okay, good. Whose knowledge is being centered in our teaching and whose isn't? What are the assumptions that we're bringing about science and expertise into our classrooms, our spaces? How do we design learning that honours local contexts while still engaging with global challenges? And how can we help students develop reflexivity and intercultural capacity to navigate those tensions with care? I hope that those are some questions that we can take forward. Thank you again for the case studies and the examples as well that people have been providing. I hope that we can move forward and continue to learn from each other. Thank you again to the speakers, Dr Swati Bute and Dr Heather Bray, and to the PCST and PCST Teaching Forum and the webinar group behind the scenes, Siddharth and Gur, and everybody here as well. Thank you. I look forward to continuing to have this conversation. As Heather slightly dropped in the discussion earlier, it is something that I am researching for my PhD. So hopefully we can continue to have these kinds of conversations again in the future.